maps, and so it's going to have a huge national impact what happens in Pennsylvania.
That's right.
And hopefully we'll get to a place where we don't have to depend on the courts to have fair maps. We can actually have a...
Well, the majority, for congressional maps, the majority will be, it's huge. It makes a difference.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. All right. So we'll wait just one more minute to get started. I pride myself on starting on time and ending on time. And I know that we are all have so many Zooms. Brian has another Zoom, and I'm sure so many of you do as well. I have one later with Representative Takano and some others as well. So we will start. All right, so we are going to get started. I see our special guest who's here with us, and so I'll get started. I just want to talk quickly about really how this came together and the power of all of you being on this call, and so many of you giving $5, $10, $30, $20 to what I consider right now one of the most important things that we can do beyond getting rid of Donald Trump, right? Getting rid of Trump is important. We have to make sure he is a one-term president. And I saw somebody in Arizona and some other state where the rhetoric that we see from the president, his complete flouting of science and of facts and of data, completely fine in the face of what the health officials are asking us to do, has put a lot of lives at risk. But I like to say to people all the time that if you are frustrated by what's happening in Harrisburg, happening in Washington, I promise you the state capital in Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, where we work, it's worse. It is worse. I promise you it's worse. And it's worse in large part because they don't get the national attention when they push some of the same right-wing, out-of-control policies that we see come out of the Republican-controlled Senate, and as we see on Trump's Twitter feed. I'll never forget when Trump was tweeting about, let's arm all school teachers and have armed guards throughout our schools. The Republicans in Harrisburg were like, hold my beer, Mr. President. I introduced that bill 6 months ago, and we're ready to pass it. When we talk about this complete flouting of science, be it on climate, which is an emergency and it's the issue of our time, or be it on COVID-19, if you want to see some folks who are passing bills every single day to really ignore all that we know from public health experts and put folks' lives at risk, all while refusing to pay our essential workers the money that they're due. If you want to see a perfect example of that, you don't have to just look on Twitter. We see it happening every single day in Harrisburg. And so Mayor Pete really gets this, and was so happy that, Mayor Pete gave me a call and I, said, Mayor Pete, I really need your help to flip PA. We think we can put something together. And as is evident by your presence here today, hundreds of people from across the country who recognize that we not only need to win the Senate, we not only need to win the presidency, but we need to make sure we have thoughtful leadership in state houses, in state senates, all across the country. I asked him if he would help. It was immediately yes, and work with my team to get it done. And so I'm just incredibly excited about the historic nature of his candidacy. At 30, I guess 35, 36, won Iowa, had a campaign that galvanized so many people from across the country around big ideas, and around this idea of how do we win the era. Pete talked about it all the time on the campaign trail, and he still talks about it now. When we talk about climate, You know, at some point I hope to have kids, and I hope they have a planet to actually live on. When we talk about equality and all the things that we need to do there, these are huge, huge issues. And I think that all of us on this call, a multiracial, multi-generational movement of folks who understand that this country can be so much better than what Trump thinks we are, can be so much better than what the right-wing conservative majority in Pennsylvania House of Representatives thinks we are. And in large part, I know we're going to do it because of each and every one of you, but also because of great leaders like Mayor Pete Buttigieg. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my friend and just a great, great leader, Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Well, thanks so much, Ann, for this effort to be part of this call. I'm so proud to be backing Representative Kenyatta and to be joined by several of his House colleagues from Pennsylvania. And can't say it any better than he just did. You know, I ran for president in the service of a set of values and beliefs about where our country needs to go. And those same values that called me to enter the race when I saw that the best way to uphold those values was to exit the race. That's what I did at that time. And then the question became, what can we do next in support of those values? One hugely important thing is, of course, to make sure that Joe Biden is the next president of the United States and defeat Donald Trump. But we can never get caught treating the presidency like it's the only office that matters. The far right learned this lesson decades ago and patiently and cleverly built up power in local and state offices, some of them less than glamorous, but extremely powerful in our American system. And we see that right now in what's happening in state houses across the country, including what's going on in the Pennsylvania legislature. And so it's in the name of ensuring that we get great leadership at every level that we are involved here with the In the Era PAC set up for just this reason. It was also set up for the purpose of backing candidates who have the qualities that brought our community of supporters together, both in the course of my presidential campaign and no matter who you were supporting in the 2020 race for the Democratic nomination, values that bind us together as Democrats and qualities that we look at for in leaders. And that's why when we went through a rigorous process of looking across the country, knowing that there were so many races and so many deserving candidates, but that we needed to choose just a handful to focus our resources and encourage our network to support, that Malcolm Kenyatta rose quickly to that list. Somebody who has been a pioneering candidate as the first out LGBT representative of color in Pennsylvania, somebody who represents the spirit of the campaign with the boldness and the clarity. I would encourage you, if you haven't had the pleasure yet, to look at the comments that he has made on the floor and the approach that he takes out with constituents, using words in a way that brings people together, but also that recognizes when there is a time to have the right kind of fight for what we believe in and to protect his constituents. And of all of those qualities that we looked for, generational leadership, a focus on the future, bold stances on the issues that matter, those pioneering qualities I talked about a moment ago. There's something else that was really remarkable. You know, if you were part of our efforts, you know, we live by what we call the rules of the road: respect, belonging, discipline, substance, joy. And another one of those is teamwork. And I'll never forget when I called Representative Kenyatta to let him know that he was on the list of candidates that we were really excited to endorse and support. The first thing he said, you know, usually what you expect is for a candidate to say something nice and then let you know all of the things they need for their race and their totals and their effort and their game plan, which is exactly what we expect. But the first thing he did was talk about his colleagues, talk about his chamber, talk about the other Democratic races that he is teaming up with to make sure that from his position of strength and the trust that he has with his constituents, that he's doing his part to make sure that others succeed to expand that Democratic caucus that he's part of, and that I know he's asked a number of other representatives to join here today, including leadership, and I'm so excited for that. This couldn't be a more important time to be supporting leaders like Representative Kenyatta and his colleagues on that team. We were, even months ago, the moment I stepped out of the presidential race, we were in a make or break moment for the life of this country. And if you told me that the stakes on the elections to come were going to go up, I would have looked at you funny because I wouldn't have been able to imagine how that could be possible. Then a pandemic hit that brought our society to a standstill. And as we're seeing with the news this week, is far, far from being under control. And then after the killing of George Floyd, the nation erupted in anguish over not only police violence that has claimed so many Black lives, but over the systemic racism and injustice that is part of all dimensions of American life. And the urgency of this becoming a country that demonstrates by our actions that Black lives matter and are valued equally in every part of this country. It could not be more urgent. It's one of another reason why 2020 and the 2020s, the decade that we're entering in, I think will decide whether our country makes it or not. We will either defeat systemic racism in this decade or we will watch it wreck the American project. We will either make bold action on climate before it's too late, or we will see the consequences of allowing it to go past the point of no return. We will either deliver a greater level of economic justice and equality, as Representative Kenyatta fights for every day, or we will go the way of every republic in history that has ever stayed at the current level of inequality, which is not a good way to go because those republics don't make it. We know what we've got to do as a country, and we know that in our system, for better and for worse, much or most of the power lies in the states. And that's why it is so important, even as we are transfixed by the horror show that is the Trump presidency, that we not allow our attention to be monopolized. I think we're living through a paradoxical moment. On one hand, things like the response to the pandemic, like the response to the anguish over racial injustice in this country, have reminded us how important those non-presidential, non-federal offices are. And at the same time, there is less attention and less oxygen than ever in order to mount successful races at that level because of everything that's going on and the way our attention is being consumed as a country. That's why we're here. That's why I'm really glad that you're here. And that's why I'm asking you to contribute and to do everything that you can to be part of the effort to make sure that we succeed in the Pennsylvania state races and the races we're supporting around the country. So I'm really looking forward to this evening's discussion. Thankful to be among you, and we'll toss it back to you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Pete, and thank you really for putting your energy and your time, where your mouth is. A lot of people talk about, what they're going to do to help, how important local elections are, but you being here today, you're the first national figure to take time specifically to help us build the war chest and support some incredibly dynamic candidates that are going to help us win the 9 seats we need to make our current minority leader, Frank Dermody, the Speaker of the House, and to start really working on a lot of the important things that we need to accomplish across the state. And you talked about it. George Floyd was not the first person we saw who was murdered because of an overzealous police officer. We had here in Pennsylvania a young man by the name of Antoine Rose, who over a year ago was murdered by an officer who had a history of misconduct. And when we talk about what needs to be done, certainly we need a Democratic House, but we also need partners in the Senate, Democratic partners in the Senate. And one of my really good friends, he's my state senator, I'm his state rep. He also chairs our state party, and he goes to every single county. I've seen Sharif in urban centers. I've seen him milking cows. I've seen him out in cornfields. I've seen him in small towns talking about how we build a Democratic Party that has candidates that represent our values and represent the future of our party, and what we need to do to make sure that this swing state, this pivotal, important swing state, delivers all of our electoral votes to Joe Biden on November 3rd. And so I'm incredibly excited to introduce my friend and the vice chair of the Pennsylvania Democratic Party, State Senator Sharif Street. Senator, do we have you on? One more second. I heard he's on. He might be getting unmuted. Yeah, he's getting unmuted. Billy, do you see Senator Street here? He's under Sharif Street.
He's under Sharif Street, you said?
Yes. He doesn't care about the titles. He's just Sharif Street. Here we go.
Hey.
Hey.
There we go. Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you for giving me a voice as you give a voice to people across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as you give a voice so often to the most disenfranchised. And you do it in a way where you talk to a broad base of constituents. One, I want you to know that I voted for you in the primary, and I'm going to, you have my vote. And I'm so pleased to be here with you. And Malcolm was kind in his remarks to me, but Malcolm is politically, I've been calling him my little brother so much in politics. There are a lot of people in our districts that think he's my actual blood brother, but we couldn't be any closer if he were. But we're pulled together not by blood, but by the ideas and values that drive a community. I want to thank Mayor Pete for his work and his stepping up to advocate for folks across the country. And after he concluded his presidential race, you can tell he had a commitment to issues because he's still out seeking out candidates to help people in different walks of life throughout America. For everyone on this call, thank you for getting on. Thank you for supporting Malcolm, and thank you for joining Malcolm and supporting candidates across the board, both in the state house, the state senate, our congressional delegation, our statewide folks, and of course Joe Biden for president. Like everybody, I feel a need to say a word about Joe Biden. Much about him as he's campaigned for him. But let me explain something. We need a person who can help bring us together, and I think Joe Biden can do that. We need a person who will embrace folks like Malcolm, who's very young, and people like my dad, who is not so young. And Joe Biden has a way of connecting with people from a number of walks of life. And he may not be the fanciest candidate, but I was using this metaphor earlier. There was a time, so often we look for a hero that can come in like Superman and save the day. And that's not Joe Biden. That might be Malcolm, but that's not Joe Biden. What Joe Biden is like is if any of us have ever been on a family vacation, and my family, we'd be in a van. And it's like the van breaks down and you got to figure out how to change the tire and do all the other stuff. Well, Joe Biden is the uncle that can pull everybody together and collectively let us know that we got to do this together. He's not going to do it by himself. We got to do it together. He can be that voice that doesn't say, I'm your hero, but who reminds us that we have more in common than we do apart. He reminds us that none of us believe he's going to be the panacea to change with his election. He's going to instantly wipe away all our problems, but he can remind us that we have the power individually, each of us, to change our circumstance. And I want to say thank you to my colleagues in the House of Representatives who helped lead the way. And Malcolm, I was one of the first people I saw in the rostrum, and I was sitting in the Senate virtual caucus. I said, that's my state rep up there. When they took over the rostrum and demanded that the House leadership, controlled by the Republicans, move forward with legislation to address the murder of George Floyd and respond to the outrage that people from all walks of life had, whether they be Black or white, old or young. The idea that we saw people who had taken an oath to protect and serve literally murder a man on a video shocked the consciousness and troubled the souls of America. And it was Malcolm, along with others in the House of Representatives, who took the rostrum and reminded us of what we needed to do. And it was an almost surreal moment when our former speaker, that sounds good, former Speaker Terzai came out and and he embraced them and said that he recognized the moment and he thought we needed to move forward with some legislation. Pleased that legislation has passed the House, and we're poised to vote it out of the Senate. And in fact, my bill in the Senate, banning chokeholds and legislation creating a database to address the Antoine Rose situation, was voted out of the Senate, where I'm sure my friends in the House, and I see a number of them, Representative Cougar Branicki, Sims, Kenyatta, and others, will make sure it gets passed. And we're going to make sure that the legislation, the very good legislation you sent us from the House, gets passed, and passed with overwhelming majorities. We have to recognize that our ability to, we need to be able to fight for the values that we believe in, but still, unlike this president who wants us to remain forever divided, bring us together to pass legislation and address the concerns of folks. And I will say, for the folks in the House and Malcolm, this is the first time that they've spoken up. Malcolm was part of a group that led a charge when folks on the other side decided to eliminate general assistance, which is, for those who don't know what general assistance, it is a cash payment. 85% of the people who receive it are in deep poverty and disabled. Deep poverty and disabled. And it is payments of usually in the average amount of a couple $100s a month. Representative Kenyatta and others in the House spoke up to say that it is inconsistent with our values that we would take away from the least of these. And for those who are religious, in the Bible, it says, as you do unto the least of these, so you do unto the Lord. And they reminded people, speaking in whatever language we needed to address people, because we have so many people and that claim Christian values, but instead of actually talking about in the Bible how it talks about doing for the least of these constantly, they focus on things that aren't even in the Bible, and they focus on why we should hate people based on who they love or who they are, when that isn't even found there, and don't focus on do for the poor, provide care for the sick. Universal health care are our values. And I want to say the Representative Kenyatta has done it in a beautiful way, has reminded us that while others may claim to be the moral majority, we have the moral high ground because we are doing what's right for people. We're doing for what's, and the other thing that he and others, and he's a little bit younger than me, but a lot of young people have led the way on, is reminding people that we have to care not just about our own issues, but we need folks in the LGBT community to care about folks who are Muslims like me. We need folks in the Muslims and Jews who are religious minorities to care about immigrants who may have just come over to this country. We need men to be champions for women's rights, and we need people who have money to care about the poor. And because as Dr. King talked about, we are all tied together in a web of mutuality. And if we really take those words and fight for it, like Malcolm does on a regular basis, people, so I'm pleased to meet him, pleased to be on a call with Mayor Pete, and really excited of the array of folks who I see in this from every walk of life who have gotten on and shown a commitment, making sure we take back the House, we take back the Senate, we hold our congressional delegation, and we elect Joe Biden president so that we can turn this country around and get rid of the arch menace that sits in the White House. And I know my friend, my colleague, and my state rep, Malcolm Kenyatta, is going to lead the way in that regard.
Thank you so much, Senator Street. When you think about somebody who's really a fighter for all the things that matter, you really have to look no further than my colleague and friend, Brian Sims, who for a long time on issues of equality and equity and women's rights and human rights, has been an incredible voice and force in the State House. And so, without further ado, Brian Sims. We're getting Brian unmuted.
There we go. You know, I gotta say, as a second-class citizen in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I'm used to people trying to mute us, right? Trying to keep my voice down. Thank you, Malcolm, for having me. I want to first say thank you to Mayor Pete. It became very clear over this last year, year and a half, 2 years. He probably would tell you down to the month exactly how long it's been, but it became very clear that Mayor Pete cares deeply about the values that inhabit the White House, and deeply about the values that inhabit Congress and all 50 states of this country. It was one of my favorite things about watching the mayor run, was making sure that he wasn't just talking to those of us on the coasts who agree, but he was talking to our friends and family members all across the country. And, you know, little gay me in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas at 8 years old would have gotten to see a Mayor Pete. And this year somebody did. And so I want to say thank you, Mr. Mayor, for focusing on Pennsylvania and for focusing on Malcolm Kenyatta. There are a number of people that are going to speak on here that can speak to just how important Pennsylvania is. And so I want to just take my time, if I can briefly, to talk to the people that have joined from outside of the Commonwealth. As we were beginning the call, we saw people signing on from Albuquerque and from Dayton and Miami and California. And I'm not only extremely grateful, I hope it's because you understand just how critically important the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is to the national discussion about everything from racial and ethnic civil rights to LGBTQ civil rights. So goes the Philadelphia suburbs, does most of the country very often. And one of the things that we've seen, certainly during my time in the state legislature, is just how wicked, just how vindictive a gerrymandered legislature can be. I think a lot of people have the assumption that if you steal control, if you gerrymander control away from the rightful owner, that those people would sort of behave in a way that would at least try to be palatable. And that's not the case. What the data tells us and what the experiences of those of us in the General Assembly tell us is that the stolen leadership of our General Assembly has come with among the most wicked, nasty, racist, xenophobic, homophobic, transphobic approach to politics, policy, equality, and civil rights in the entire country. And so while all of you across the country clearly tuned in because of how amazing Mayor Pete is and how exciting Malcolm Kenyatta is, I hope that you also recognize that both we in Pennsylvania need your help and we in the United States need Joe Biden as our president. You know, kind of like Joe Biden, I'm not a native Pennsylvanian either, and yet I live here because my values, my ethics, my morals are reflected in the people in this city. And I see those same values reflected in Joe Biden. And so I'm not somebody that has to look very far to understand and to find the inspiration in a guy and a leader like Joe Biden. He's proven his entire life that he cares about people all around him, not just those people in his own sphere. And that's what we see right now from Republicans in Pennsylvania and Republicans across the country. If there has ever been a more stark contrast, I don't know it. Right now, we are talking about literally the party of me versus the party of we. And Joe Biden cares about all of us in this country. And all of you that are out there watching right now, I hope that you understand that Pennsylvania is a bellwether state, that the country needs Pennsylvania to go blue. All of us that are LGBTQ, all of us that are Black and brown and first and second generation immigrants and women in the Commonwealth need your help as well. And then collectively, we all need to make sure that Joe Biden is serving in the White House come January.
Thank you so much, Brian. And you said it absolutely right. And here in Pennsylvania, we're incredibly lucky. I'm telling you, for everybody who's on this call right now, I get to work with some of the best people in the world, folks who care deeply about their communities, who understand what's at stake in this election, who understand what's at stake in all these House races we're going to have across the Commonwealth. And this team at Hdcc is led by somebody who's really the best of the best. And so I'm excited to hear from our fearless leader, Representative Leanne Kruger.
Thank you so much, Bill, and thank you, Malcolm. Hi, everybody. It's so exciting to see people from around the country joining us to hear about our plan to flip the PA House. Mayor Pete, I'm so grateful that you are still engaged and looking to lift up young, emerging political leaders like Malcolm and to help us do the work that we need to do in Pennsylvania. We're so grateful for that. And, you know, Sharif in the Senate and Brian and I and Malcolm in the State House are working very, very hard to flip our chamber. So let me tell you a little bit about what's possible this year and why flipping the PA House matters, because, you know, maybe we just need to focus on the presidency. So Donald Trump won Pennsylvania by 44,000 votes in 2016. The research shows that if you want to increase the margin at the top of the ticket, you need to work at the bottom of the ballot. And our state house seats, each of us represent about 65,000 people. We're the last level of government that can go out and knock on people's doors, or in the midst of COVID right now, call people and explain to them. Our candidates can actually make a case directly to the voter about why their race matters and the values that they share. And I know many of the folks who are running to flip seats in the House are actually on this call right now. I know that Malcolm has invited many of you. So if you can wave, if you're running for the PA House this year, wave, please, so people can see who you are. So these fearless candidates working their butts off at the bottom of the ballot will drive turnout up. And they are key to making sure that Donald Trump never wins Pennsylvania again, and that Joe Biden is our president after November 3rd. Here's also why this matters. So many of the issues that you care about, the issues that Mayor Pete ran on, are decided at the state level here in Pennsylvania. Just a couple weeks ago, right before the Supreme Court ruled on non-discrimination, Malcolm ran an effort on the floor to overturn discriminatory practices here in Pennsylvania for our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. It's still legal. It's still been legal here to fire someone for being gay. Malcolm gave an impassioned speech. You should look it up on YouTube and watch it. His effort failed by 2 votes, folks. 2 votes. Today, we are 9 seats out of the majority in Pennsylvania. We only need to flip 9 seats. There are more than 9 candidates on this call that are running fearlessly to flip this year. So if we really want to become a leader in LGBTQ issues, we need to flip the House. If we care about climate change, we need to flip the House. Right now, there is a majority environmental committee chair who does not believe that climate change exists, folks. He is determining our environmental policy in Pennsylvania. We've got a bill passed yesterday to make it even easier for people to open carry guns during emergency declarations, which is not the policy we need right now. Another member has introduced an effort to impeach our governor over his handling of the COVID pandemic. And yet the CDC has recognized Pennsylvania as one of the 3 states where we've seen a steady decline in cases. No matter what issue you care about, women's rights, climate change, LGBT issues, anything, just good government, it's under attack right now. And Malcolm and Brian and Sharif and I need some more help. 9 seats is absolutely possible in November. Our friends at the national level are saying that Pennsylvania is the 2nd most flippable chamber in the country come November. So not only will it help us get better policies and advance the progressive values that I believe we all share, but it will also help us to get Donald Trump out of the White House, because helping a candidate at the bottom of the ballot will drive turnout up on November 3rd in a way that nothing else will. So Malcolm, I'm so grateful that you are not just saying, oh, I've gotten through my primary, I'm good, but you are a freshman member of our caucus who is committed to bringing others along with you. And thanks so much, everybody who's joining us today. Pennsylvania has no campaign finance limits. That means that fracking companies can write $1 million check to the Republican opponents. And so it's grassroots support like this that makes everything else possible. And so at this point, I'm going to introduce our leader, the leader of the House Democratic Caucus, Frank Dermody. And Bill, if you can unmute him, please.
We're getting the leader unmuted right now. And you'll be unmuted forever, Frank, when you're in control of the microphone and the gavel on the on the House floor. And so we're looking forward to it. But Bill, he's iPad 10 here. We can unmute him. One second, Frank.
And I see some of our candidates who are running, putting their names in the chat. Call yourself out so people know where you're running. So if you haven't weighed in yet, let's hear from you. See Lindsay Drew, who's running in Dauphin County. I also saw Brittany Rodas running in Dauphin County. Dan Smith trying to take out the environmental chair who doesn't believe that climate change exists. Nancy Gunst running in an open seat. Anne Marie Mitchell fighting hard for a seat we only lost by a small margin last time. Jonathan Casa running to flip a seat in Montgomery County. Jason Ruff running up in the Lehigh Valley, as is Joanna Bryn Smith. Sorry, Frank, you're still muted.
Yeah, Frank, you're still muted. But Leanne, this is valuable in the meantime while we get this this technical glitch figured out. If you can keep going through the candidates
Sure. So
who you see on, because this is why we're here, why we're doing this.
Who have I missed so far? Paul Barnes running in Lancaster. He's running in a tough area, folks. But we need to play everywhere. We need to play everywhere in 2020. Yep. Jonathan Cass at Montgomery County, running in a seat that we only lost by a narrow margin in 2018.
Okay, and so I think we've gone through most of them, and we're going to get this figured out with Frank here in a second. But I think that as Leanne just pointed out, this is the most important election of our lifetime, and these are the candidates who are doing the work on the ground to actually help ensure that we win this election. And I know that all of us, as we've been doing these Zooms, have been figuring out the tech issues as they've come up. And just give us a second here as we work through them. I see Kathleen Logan here. You might be able to unmute Frank. So sorry we have this technical difficulty. Leanne, for the sake of time, while we're doing this and want to benefit people's time, can you talk about how many seats we have in play and what the change looks like from last time?
Sure. Thanks, Malcolm. So we need to flip 9 seats to take the majority this year. To put it in context, folks, in 2018, which was a great blue wave, we flipped 14 seats. So we know that we can do it again. The polling for Joe Biden is looking promising, but like you, I looked at polls in 2016, and what they told us was going to happen and what happened at the end of the day was 2 very different things. So none of us can rest until election day is over and every single vote is cast. Even if polling is looking promising, we can't actually take a chance because we've seen before, right, that polls don't always tell the truth about what's going to happen at the end of the day. So we flipped 14 seats in 2018. We need 9 more to get there. And there are incredible candidates running all over the Commonwealth. There's 13 seats still left in the Philadelphia suburbs held by Republicans. We're going after every single one of them this year. We've got Lindsay and Brittany in Dauphin County who are running in a seat that's embedded in a top congressional race where Eugene DePasquale is running to flip a congressional seat. Nancy Pelosi has said that that's going to be one of the top congressional seats in the country. And so we know there's a state Senate seat right under that's also competitive. Brittany and Lindsay are running there. When we have nesting opportunities, which means you've got a competitive congressional seat with a state Senate seat, with a House seat, all of them become more competitive. And then we've got 3 seats out in out in Allegheny County, including the speaker's seat. There's a fearless woman, Emily Skopoff, who chased Mike Turzai out of office. He left office last week. And there's 3 seats there. And then we've got Joanna and a couple of other folks up in Lehigh that are running hard in races. So our map this year is based on the seats that our governor, Tom Wolf, won in 2018, but are still held by a Republican. And our map is also based on seats that our U.S. Senator Bob Casey won in 2018, but are held by a Republican. When you combine those together, there's over 30 seats that could be competitive this year. We'll be polling soon to determine which seats are most viable. And all of our candidates who are running, I see Sarah Hammond is here too, is running. So we'll ultimately make decisions on where to spend the money that you're investing in us based on the seats that are most viable. And every single one of these candidates have the chance to make themselves more competitive by raising money and knocking on doors, or in the midst of COVID, making phone calls and talking to voters. So that's our strategy for this year. And if there's anyone who's interested, we're grateful for the donation that you made now. If there's anyone connected to donor groups, I've seen folks on here from Future Now and other donor groups, we're happy to give you a deeper briefing on our strategy if that's helpful at any point. And you can work through Malcolm or our team at the House Democratic Campaign Committee.
And when folks, Leanne, are what type of support is HDCC giving to candidates? And when folks are donating to right now from across the country, how is HDCC and the work that you're doing really supporting these candidates?
So there's a lot of things that we do through the campaign committee. We helped to recruit a lot of the folks who are running. So some folks we helped get through primaries. We have campaign managers, staff on the ground to keep them organized. We're paying for polling to determine what are the winning messages in this district. Because some of the folks on the call today are running in districts that Democrats haven't run in for a long time. So we don't actually know what messages are most compelling. We need to test that with polling. We've got digital programs that are running to educate voters. And at the end of the day, we'll be sending postcards. We've got some volunteers out there who've already been sending postcards in this race. And we'll be using proven modern campaign strategies to reach voters. Phone banking is happening now. We've got some great volunteer groups like Turn PA Blue who are helping our candidates reach more voters through phone banking. So basically every strategy you can think of we're deploying right now, and your investment will help us make all of this possible.
And that's huge, and we're trying to get through some of the tech challenges we're having right now, but I think we have it figured out, and we are going to have now our next speaker, Frank Dermody. Bill is now the host and is going to unmute him right now. Thank you, Bill. Hold on one more second, Frank. And everyone, thank you really for dealing with us as we deal with these tech issues. This is one of the biggest events we've ever had, and the first time we're doing it on Zoom. And so we are feeling what a lot of folks have felt as we've started dealing with the challenges of Zoom in this tech world that COVID has thrust upon all of us. But I think Bill here should be able to, at this point, to unmute our leader and future speaker.
Am I on?
Yes.
Is
Welcome,
that
Frank.
right? What happened? Sorry about that. It wasn't anything I did. It wasn't my fault. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Leanne. And really, thank you, Malcolm. I appreciate everybody's patience here, trying to get through it. Thank everybody on this call, and thank you, Mayor Pete.
So everything that could have gone possibly wrong has gone wrong, but we are everybody's back, and thank you for sticking with us. Not in charge of tech. I can't do it all as much as I would love to.
Can you hear me now?
But Frank, we can hear you now.
Well, do you really? I'm sorry about all this. I don't know what the heck happened. I went off the air. That happens? Oh my God, am I gone again?
Nope, you're good. Go ahead.
Are you sure? Hey, Mayor Pete, how are you? Thank you. Thank you
Good,
for
good.
everything. Look, you said it earlier. I'll certainly, all the remarks, but you said it earlier. What's gone on in this country, the Republicans over the last 20 years have concentrated on local elections. They've talked about, they ran candidates in school board races. They created a bench and took over state houses all over the country. And that's where they can do some real damage, and they have. When you talk about women's rights, climate change, LGBTQ rights, whatever it is, they have made inroads and made tremendous strides, and it's been detrimental. It's been detrimental to America, and it certainly has been to Pennsylvania. So I can't tell you how much we appreciate the opportunity for you and all of you on this call to help us get back into a majority that makes sense, will make sense for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, for the children of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, for public education, for healthcare, for women's healthcare. I mean, right now, although the Supreme Court did just, had a great decision this week, but for LGBTQ people, they can still discriminate in Pennsylvania on housing and healthcare, and those things are still out there. We've had bills for years that have been drafted and have been pent up and bottled up because of the Republican majority. So helping us, and Leanne has done a great job, and their whole leadership team and recruiting candidates. We've got quality. You've talked to many of them are on this call, and they're working hard, and we've got an absolute shot to get to the majority. So this is incredibly helpful. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your help and all the help from the people on this call. Sharif, we hope the Senate takes the majority, but we're first. So, but Ed Malcolm has just done a tremendous job, and I can't thank you enough, and thank everybody on the call. And I apologize. I hope these technical difficulties weren't my fault, but we really have an opportunity for the first time in a decade to have a shot at a majority, and your help tonight is so important.
Frank, they certainly were not your fault, and the good news is we've been able to capture all this. So for the moments where we've missed, we'll be able to make sure folks can hear this conversation.
Good.
Because it is an important conversation. But we do want to we're coming up on time. But we do want to just Mayor Pete so graciously said he'll take a couple of questions, and I know that we do have one question that's going to come in now from Tom Levy. So Tom, let's unmute, and then your question for Mayor Pete. And we're getting Tom Levy unmuted here. Mayor Pete, since we have you unmuted, and I think a lot of folks are here for you, can you talk about what are some of the things at the state level? You went all across the country talking to state leaders, and I know that so often you get to talk about national issues, but can you talk about, again, and I know you talked about at the top of why state leadership matters, but some of the specific policy things in swing states like Pennsylvania and swing states across the country that you think are going to galvanize people to the polls?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Leader Germany just mentioned one, which is from an LGBTQ perspective. Great news about the civil rights decision in the Supreme Court, but that covers some things and not others. And we have yet to have it tested in terms of all kinds of accommodations around health, housing, and others. Until there's an Equality Act, a lot of this depends on whether people are protected at the state level. Our democracy itself, right, in this country, for better or for worse, elections are run by states and even county officials. And sometimes we forget that. And so much depends on making sure the conduct of our elections, especially from the perspective of making safe voting available to everybody from home by mail and in person, in the COVID pandemic, so much of that cashes out at the state level. Senator Street was describing the issues of aid that are being decided at the state level really can absolutely make or break families and individuals who depend on that kind of support in order to be able to thrive and live a life of their choosing. Medicaid expansion, right? This has been an issue in many states I've seen across the country. Mental health, getting mental health right depends so much on the resources that happen at the state level. Public health, that's why the pandemic response has been so different. To the governor's credit, a lot of good work done in Pennsylvania. No thanks to your legislative Republican colleagues. Just a few examples of why it's just imperative to make sure that we do flip that chamber, that we succeed in the House and the Senate, and continue with the great leadership.
Right, and so Mayor Pete, we have two questions. What I'm going to ask folks is, Tom's going to ask a question, Anita's going to ask a question, and Mayor Pete, I know you're so good, you'll be able to just answer both of them, but I'll let you hear both of their questions.
Great, we'll take them both, and then I'll try to respond to both. Sounds good.
All right, Tom.
All right. Hey, Malcolm, thank you. Hope everyone can hear me. And Mayor Pete, thank you for being here. Thank all the legislators for being here. A question that I've been dealing with, because I work with a lot of young professionals here in Philadelphia and in the kind of southeastern Pennsylvania region, and there's so much important going on, but the one thing that a lot of specifically young professionals are dealing with is the fact that they've been hit really hard by furloughs and unemployment due to the pandemic, obviously. And for young professionals like myself, I'm blessed enough to still be employed, but for folks like me, and honestly yourself, that are kind of in our mid to late 30s, this is the second time we've been through this. And a lot of us didn't really have a great time in 08 and 09. I bartended with a degree, I did what I could to get by. And so a lot of us are going through this for the second time, sometimes with families. So what do I say to those? What advice would you give to those young professionals? And why is it so important that we not only get Joe Biden in the White House and try to flip the Senate and retain the House, but so important for Pennsylvanians, young Pennsylvanians, to flip the House?
Perfect. That's the first one, and then Anita Lewis, we're getting you unmuted right now.
Hello, my name is Anita. I'm a healthcare talk. Sorry, I'm hearing that feedback. Sorry. I'm concerned about really the healthcare, the bill, the ACA bill that they've been working on trying to repeal, that's now in the Supreme Court. And I know right now we cannot afford to have people lose their health care, especially right now. So I'm just really curious, what kind of messages are you sharing with people? What are you telling people to do as far as being proactive or engaging or reaching out to their legislators to ask them to get involved or get vocal about, I guess, stopping or taking action against the Supreme Court making a judgment right now anyway?
That's right. This is a moment where there's so many things going on. I'm worried they might get away with there not being a lot of attention on this. As we speak, the Trump administration is filing in court in order to destroy the Affordable Care Act. There's no such thing as a good time to take health care away from millions of Americans, but this is an especially bad time to be taking health care away from millions of Americans. And so the only thing that we can do is make sure that there is a political price to be paid for doing that. And we know that works because we've done it before. The first time I was on the ballot was 2010. In Indiana, that was a tough time to be a Democrat running for office. And we were getting killed over the issue of the Affordable Care Act. Then the act went into effect, and people saw the difference it was making in their lives. And by 2018, it had gone from being a killer issue for Democrats to being the winning issue for Democrats, for the simple reason that it affected so many individual everyday lives, and people were getting in their legislators' faces, their members of Congress, saying, if you take this away, you're going to hurt me, and here's how. It's the same thing with Medicaid expansion. The states that haven't done it are where we are seeing far more medical vulnerability, especially for Americans of color and for low-income Americans of every race. And so we have got to raise our voices knowing that we already have the American people with us on this issue. It's why even when they controlled the Senate, they still couldn't do it by voting it out. It's why they're trying this backdoor way to take it apart in the courts. This is pretty personal for me because even though I've got a lot of work, I don't have an employer right now. I get my health care through the ACA. I got a good insurance. Chasten and I get our health plan that way. More Americans should have the opportunity, if it's right for them, in my view, to decouple their health care plan from an employer and be able to get, in my view, there ought to be a public plan to do it, but have that choice. And so we've got, look, this is already a winning issue for us. The American people are with us on this, even in more conservative areas. We've just got to make sure that they can't get away with this without paying a political price. And it's a reminder of what's at stake in the courts too. And I do think, to Tom's question, this is especially live for my generation and the generation to come. And you're right. You got a millennial generation that came of age and experienced the financial crisis and is now taking this other beating. We were already on track to be the first generation in American history, perhaps, to earn less than our parents. If you were born when my parents were born, 90% chance you'd come out ahead of where your parents had been economically. Now it's a coin flip. And so those who are graduating now, it's going to be even tougher. So the message I have to them is, especially to those who are just graduating, is a couple of things I try to make sure they hear. In fact, I'll mention three things. The first, the longer you're planning to be here, the more you have at stake in the decisions that are about to be made about your healthcare access, about the economy you're going to be working in and living in, about the climate that will shape and make or break some of your opportunities in life. That's the first thing. The second thing is, this is a terribly challenging time, but there's also an opportunity that comes with that, because the decisions we're about to make on how our states and our country emerge from this pandemic and emerge from the economic crisis that goes with it and emerge from this moment of reckoning over racial justice in this country, those decisions we're about to make right now are going to set the table for how the years to come unfold. They're not just immediate problem-solving decisions. This is nothing less than deciding what the shape of our political and economic and social arrangements is going to be like really for the rest of our lives. And so those who are coming out of age now also have an opportunity to be present at the creation of policies and decisions and institutions that will be as impactful on American life for this century as the New Deal was for the last century. But for any of that to work, we need leaders of imagination, and we need leaders from that newer generation. And that's one of the reasons why we're so excited to support Malcolm Kenyatta and others like him. And each of those representatives that you heard from, those leaders that you heard from today, regardless of where they fit on the generational spectrum, are making policies that make sense for that future generation. This is our moment of maximum empowerment, right? In a democracy, we rightly speak up and raise our voices at every turn and take to the streets when that is the right thing to do, that events call us to do that. But the moment of greatest power is the moment we walk into that ballot box and make that choice. And so this is our chance to take our fate into our own hands, especially for a younger generation, rather than surrender to the status quo, because we can't and we should try to go back to where we were, to the old way with the same winners and losers and the same weaknesses that led us to this point. This is our chance to do better.
So Mayor Pete, we're going to wrap up here, but first of all, I want to say congratulations on your anniversary, which I know is very recent with Chasten. And if you could, you don't have to get deeply personal, but you're working all the time. We see you out all the time. You're fighting for the things that not only mattered in your campaign, but mattered when you were mayor, are going to matter in the future. What do you do when you're not working? How do you unplug? Because I think everything's going on with Trump. We're all thinking about politics all the time, especially folks who are on this call. How do you sort of take care of yourself on that other side of it? And I'll have those words, because we all need to decompress after this. I'll have those words be the last words of the night. So thank you so much again.
Sounds good. Well, first of all, again, thanks for your leadership, and to everybody in the House and Senate Democratic caucuses for what you're doing, and everybody on this call. And I see some names here who come again and again and again to the calls that as I'm inviting your attention to really important races across the country. So thanks for being here for this all-important Pennsylvania conversation, and thanks for being here for Representative Kenyatta. You're right, we've all got to unplug right now. There's a lot of pressure on our optimism and on our health and on our energy. And I don't know about you, I find in some ways it's hard, even though I don't go very far. In many ways, it's harder to do what we do without that kind of reassurance of just being out among people in normal social situations. So for us, I'm reading a lot, something I didn't get to do much on the campaign. I'm enjoying that opportunity. We're definitely doing our share of binge watching here and there. Central Park has been a lot of fun. We're just getting into that. And always up for new Netflix recommendations. You know, we're really lucky to have two creatures in our life who don't know or care what's going on in the news. Buddy and Truman just want us to take them for a walk. They want their treats. They're going to love us the same no matter what. So that's been bringing us a little bit of balance too. But I hope everybody here is taking care of yourself and knows that it's okay to take care of yourself. You don't have to be checking off every item on your to-do list. We all fantasize about what we do if we were able to shape our schedule differently and take care of all those things around the house and never leave, but it doesn't work that way. And so while we're all committed to this important work, we got to look after ourselves and lift each other up while we're at it. And I know you're all attuned to that. So what a pleasure to be with everybody. These opportunities to see the good leadership that's going on, they definitely lift my spirits. And we're going to have a lot to celebrate in November if we do the work. So let's make sure we give ourselves reason to feel good when we look back on what we did in 2020.
Thank you for your support. Thank you for your friendship. And take care of yourself. And say hi to Chasten, Buddy, and Truman for us. All right. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, everybody.